I'm live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Ministry Mondays with Meg. I'm Meg. I'm Reverend Meg Biddle. I always forget to put my name up there. Not like you don't know who I am. Reverend Meg Biddle, National Coordinator for Ministry Life. And, whatever else I need to do. Host, creator of the show. Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you here. It is indeed Monday, and I need more caffeine. So today's guest, let me back up and say thanks everybody for watching/listening. We are glad that you are here. Today's guest, you know him, you love him, friend of the show, Reverend Paul Schneider. I need to have like music and be able to do like confetti, like I need to be able to do that. I need to find out how I do that. I need to learn how to do that. I'm sure there's a way to do it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some way that you can make that happen.
I know. So welcome. Glad to have you.
I'm glad to be here again.
And as I already said, love the shirt.
Well, I got a rep, right?
It's great. Yeah. And also this one's about Paul. When he shows up at an event, I don't know if it's just to make me feel better or just because he likes the t-shirt because it's an awesome t-shirt.
It is very comfy.
Thank you. I tell people that. But he comes wearing his Ministry Mondays with Meg shirt, and I always get a kick out of it. It always makes me smile when people do that when they wear it and they take pictures of themselves and it's just fun. And if you are sitting there going, how can I be a guest on Ministry Mondays with Meg? How can I get a t-shirt? Well, you get a t-shirt by being a guest. And if you've got a ministry that's beyond the traditional pulpit, you know how to get a hold of me. You can email me. You can send me a message on Facebook, those kind of things. And we'll talk. But today, we're talking to Paul. So Paul, you've had some changes and stuff since the last time because it's been a little over a year, I believe, since your last show. So what's up with you?
Well, I'm in the unique point of being at like one of those pivot points in ministry, right? I am the pastor of Burien Community Church, but only through the end of the year. And in part, that's because of my role with the Evergreen Association of American Baptist Churches, which is one of the 34 regions of the American Baptist Churches. And I am the Associate Executive Minister of Operations and Administration. And so what that means in very short terms is that my job is to not only handle all of the operations of the region, including things like receiving the incoming United Missions check and making sure the monies go where they're supposed to, and answering the phones when people call and have questions, but also helping not just the region, but also churches improve their operations and administrations, and helping them get some of these things that sometimes take up a lot of our time and energy in churches kind of set and locked in so that they can focus on the things that churches really need to be doing out there, and maybe being able to apportion their energy a little bit differently. And so that's a big part of what I do. I'm also the guy who answers the practical questions. Hey, we're calling a new pastor. What is the appropriate going rate? Those kinds of things. Hey, we need to update our HR protocols. Do you have something that we can base that off of? That kind of thing. So
do you have all that stuff, by the way? Because if so, I might call you.
Yeah, I have quite a bit of it. I'm working on gathering more, and I've been blessed. I've got some good connections. Dr. Laura Moraz, who is the HR person for ABHMS, has helped me out in a couple of cases where I needed just some advice on how to move forward with something and the ways to recommend things. So that's been super helpful. And then I've also been working with other churches. And so every time I get a copy of someone's employment policies, it just goes in a folder. And then when somebody says, oh, I need employment policies, I'll be like, great, I've got 4. Here's, this is a good place to start, is, somebody's already done the work,
Right.
And that's the thing, is that in a lot of cases, churches don't need to reinvent the wheel, but boy, so often we do. And, and so, we're Baptist. It's not like we as the region can tell you how to function, but we can make recommendations, and we can offer best practices. And that's what I try and do.
Which is incredibly helpful. And it sounds like you are far more organized than I am, because you're like, then it goes in a folder. And I'm like, I know I have that around here somewhere. Hopefully I saved it in my email. I mean, it's just
There
like
is
a thousand things.
There's a reason why I'm sitting in this room and doing this with you, is because otherwise you might see my desk. And, I'm one of those people who needs to have everything that I'm working on out in front of me. So it looks like total chaos, but it's all in there somewhere.
Okay, see, you see my office. I get that too. Like, I think in piles.
That's right.
There are piles. I know what pile it's in. I know exactly what pile it's in. I just got to flip through enough things to find it. So, yeah. I mean, I realize digital, blah, 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 blah. For me, that's just, maybe it's part of the ADD thing. I don't know. But for me, that's just like, it's harder to try and track digitally.
Yeah, what I learned is that if I don't have folders for these things and put them in the folders right when I get them, then they don't end up in there. And then when I'm looking for them, I'm trying to look back through 2 years of emails to find the one that I got, and make sure that it was the person who I actually spoke to and not the pastor of the church, or whatever. So I mean, sometimes those things get tricky, and so that's why I've started to I just have these folders of these different kinds of documents, including things like articles of incorporation and bylaws and so on, so that new churches that are getting off the ground, again, they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They don't have to start from scratch. They can just go ahead and take something and adapt it to their needs.
So you mentioned the church that you've been serving, and forgive me, I forget how long you've been at Burien.
6.5 years now.
Okay. So the plan is for them to close, right, at the end of the. So what happens to everything, all the stuff, all the buildings? What do you do? How do you do that?
So I mean, that's a choice that each church makes for itself. And right now, we're figuring out what we're going to do with these buildings. Our goal as Burien Community Church, we're proud of the fact that we're a neighborhood church. We're proud of the community that we're in, and we want to make sure that ministry continues in that community. And so one of the things we considered was we could probably get a decent chunk of change, which we could then give to very worthy ministries if we were to sell the whole property. But if we did that, if we sold it to developers and we got a few $1 million for it, maybe, then they would be turned into houses, and there would be no more place for ministry in that neighborhood.
Okay.
And so our commitment is to making sure that the place for ministry in that neighborhood remains. And so Evergreen is looking to create a space, an incubation space, for new ministries, and we are considering that our building spaces might be that. So that would be a place for ministries that are in that regrowth cycle. They've gotten small, they're kind of restarting and getting going again, or churches that are just getting off the ground. Maybe they've outgrown their living room, but don't quite have enough people to rent a church space or something like that yet. We want to provide a space for those ministries to be able to gather, to worship, and to be able to get their programs going and off the ground. And that's something that fits in with Evergreen's flow of innovation and dynamic thinking when it comes to ministry. And Evergreen is committed to that. In a large part, my job is actually facilitating that goal, right? Because if we can get our churches operating as efficiently as possible, using best practices and getting things off the ground, there's a lot of difficulties that churches face that just vanish, right? And then they can focus on how they connect with their communities in new and different ways, how they pursue ministry in, a different century. And how they can build connections with each other, with the denomination, with churches in their community that are ecumenical, right? And so that's a big part of what I do. And then one of the other people here at Evergreen, one of the other staff members, Reverend Sam Kim, is our Associate Executive Minister of Innovation and Design. And we have something called the Pneuma Initiative that we are doing that is really designed to help spark these innovative ministry ideas and help them get off the ground and get going, and help churches think differently about iterating ministry, right? Because the fact is that rarely do you try something and it's perfect the first time out the gate. Instead, you kind of have to try it and learn from it, and try it and learn from it, and try it and learn from it. And we've got this problem in Western culture, for the most part, of wanting things to be perfect right as they go. And then when they're not, we just go, oh, this didn't work at all. And that's not usually true. Usually it did work, or even it worked some. And so then the question is, what can we learn from this? And then how do we incorporate that into what we do going forward? And so that's a big part of my role here, is to help kind of push forward with that kind of innovation, so that even our churches that are doing really well and aren't in danger of closing, or our churches that are just looking for new ways to reconnect with their community, or even finding new ministries to get involved in, that they develop kind of a theology of failing forward. And
I love that. I can't remember who wrote that, but I had that on a sticky note in my office at both of the churches I pastored, was always fail forward. I can't remember who said it, but yeah, it's brilliant advice.
Yeah, and Pastor Sam is excellent at this kind of, he calls it human-centered design, but he's one of the, I think, probably the first people to really take human-centered design, which is a very sort of secular corporate world concept, and think about the theological implications of that. And what does it mean to implement it in the church, and do so in ways that are life-giving and generative, and not built entirely on a corporate model, right?
So it's taking the design thinking. I mean, at least I took design thinking at Central, in my doctorate of ministry class, and applying theology to the design thinking. Okay.
And you can actually find out a little bit more about the Pneuma Initiative if you go to the Evergreen website, and there's actually a Pneuma tab there. I forget exactly which of our menu items it's under, but
tell you what, listeners, viewers, and listeners, I will put it in the show notes. I will put the Evergreen website there for you, and so you can go right to that page. I will do that for you.
And I've actually just dropped the link in the chat.
Awesome.
And so you can find out more about the Pneuma Initiative there, about what we're doing and this kind of new way of thinking that we're working on. And all again for the goal of helping churches share the gospel and live it out in really dynamic ways.
Is this helpful for your church to know that the building is going to continue to be used in this way? Is that
yeah,
I mean, in the healing process? I mean, because I imagine most people.
So Burien Community Church started about 26 years ago, and it was the merging of two churches, Columbia Baptist Church, which was in the Columbia Valley in Seattle, and then Gregory Heights Baptist Church. And the physical buildings and everything are on the Gregory Heights property. The two churches merged and sold the Columbia property, and then they used those monies for ministry for different things. So Columbia had been around for over 100 years, if you count its time as part of Burien Community Church. It was founded either late in the 1800s or the early 1900s, and then Gregory Heights started in the 1950s. And so you've got 60 plus years of people who have sacrificed, who have ministered, who have been part of that community. And that legacy is really important, and we want to honor that. And so that's part of why we are so committed to the idea that this center for ministry in this neighborhood isn't going to go away, that it's still going to be a place for that. And we share space with a couple of other churches already, and they will be they are churches that are in that regrowth, renew cycle, and so they'll be kind of some of the first people to take advantage of this innovation space in Evergreen. And I should caveat that and say, if that's actually how that all goes, right? Because technically some of those decisions haven't made yet. We have taken our official vote to begin the closing process. And, one thing that even though my last day of ministry with them as their pastor will be December 31st, I feel pretty good in the fact that because of my role with Evergreen, I'm going to be walking with them through this process the whole way. So as the associate exec of operations and administration, I am the guy to help them with that. So,
just one question as an associate exec now. I'm sure the answer is probably no, but I'm going to ask anyway. So, will you be competing with Jared to steal pastors from other regions?
So here's the thing, is that I'm well aware of the fact that Jared doesn't view it as stealing, but rather as providing opportunities. And the fact is that Evergreen is a great opportunity. And so I don't know if competing is the right word, but let's just say that Jared's not the only one who's out there with a great region, with great churches that are looking for great pastors.
Wow, that was very well done. We did not even plan this, and that's just well done. I mean, all right. I mean, I do love the Evergreen region. And I do love New York State, but I promise in my role, I don't play favorites. Anyway, so did I imagine seeing somewhere on the interwebs that you all have a podcast now?
No, that's absolutely correct. We just started our podcast. It's going to be releasing about one episode a month, and it's called Cultivate. And so it's Reverend Sam Kim talking with people about the ministries, sometimes of Evergreen, sometimes beyond Evergreen, but about the things that we are doing and how they connect to that idea of sort of like a theologically centered human design thinking that would help our churches, again, kind of iterate forward into new and exciting ministries.
Well, once you have that first episode up or whatever, if you want to give me that information, I'll attach it to this episode. So
sure.
Can check it out when it's ready to go. You don't have to do it.
Let's see.
You can always.
I'll definitely get that to you.
I just imagine people would wanna learn more about that, and so those that take advantage of this space will obviously need to be in the area. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so here's the thing, right?
Is Evergreen's one of those weird.
We are a very geographically diverse region.
Yeah.
At this point, we kind of have two centers. So generally in the Seattle to Olympia area in Washington, so that's Western Washington, right? Or sorry, Western Washington. That's where a good chunk of our churches are, over half. And then we have more churches in Eastern Washington. We have one in Idaho. We have one in Alaska. We have 3 in Utah, 2 in Colorado, and we have 15 churches in California.
Wow. I did not realize. Yeah. Wow, I didn't realize there was that many in that many places. That's awesome.
Yeah, 6 states. I mean, and one of the things that we're working on is trying to figure out, how do we deal with that geographic diversity, right? Because especially when it comes to annual meetings, when it comes to those kinds of things. So we've been really working on thinking through how do we make our events as inclusive as possible? How do we build events that are truly hybrid and not just kind of hybrid as an afterthought, but hybrid with intentionality, hybrid paying attention to what that online experience feels like and how people can in fact participate. One of the things that Evergreen does differently is that we organize and do business by ethnic caucus and by consensus. And so we're fortunate that it just so happens that the Evergreen staff actually has representatives from every caucus now. So there's Reverend Douglas Aviles Bernal, who is our executive minister, who's in the Hispanic caucus, Reverend Sam Kim, who is our associate executive of innovation and design, and he's in the Asian caucus, myself, and I'm in the Euro caucus, and then Reverend Siobhan Walker, who is our ministry associate for social media, and she is in the Black caucus. And so when we break out into our caucus groups to discuss our business, we actually have a staff member there in each caucus, and that allows us to really move the Zoom part of the meeting into that. So you don't get cut off, or you don't have to just watch a stream of the business, but you can really participate in the business because of how we do business. And there's a lot there, and Doug is a lot better at explaining that than me. So, but it's a very different model than your standard sort of Robert's Rules of Order. Everybody gets in and you go through the agenda line by line. But I also think it's actually a very Baptist model. And part of our commitment to it is that it allows every voice to be heard. No voice gets drowned out. And that to us is a big part of why we do it the way that we do it and what makes Evergreen Evergreen.
I'm a huge fan of consensus and giving a space for all voices to be heard. And so, yeah, I'm really appreciate that the Evergreen region has representation in all the places, which is so important, so important. And I don't want to forget, like, are you completely finished now? The co-creators, you just finished?
So the co-creators launch event happened in October. We still have a couple of meetings that we're doing online because we are, again, a geographically diverse group, the co-creators. And so, but yeah, so we gathered in October there at the Lamb building at ABHMS for a chance for some training, a chance for us to do pitches on our different ministry products. We had a great panel of ministry entrepreneurs who helped us and gave us feedback on our panel, on our pitches. And that was an amazing experience, more than a little nerve-wracking, I'll admit. But the feedback that I got was super helpful. And just this whole co-creators process has been really, really significant. There's been a lot that I've learned. There's a community that I've gained. And the mutual support of what the different entrepreneurs are doing is so exciting. And it's funny because people will ask me about my ministry, which is the Oasis project, right? Which isn't just my ministry. I do it with a bunch of other people. It's an interfaith ministry, but that's what I came to the co-creators for. I am the founder and director of the Oasis project. And I'm glad to tell them about it, but there's also part of me that's like, yeah, but wait, there are these other cool ministries that you need to know about that are happening. And so, I could wax poetic about them, but I think you'd be better served by having them on your show yourself and letting them talk about their ministries.
I mean, if any of them are watching, hello, come on over. The invitation is open. We want to have all of you on here. And Coach Gary was on. Who was one of the judges.
He was one of the panelists.
Gary was on last week and was a great guest. Had no idea that he's got a show about to go on Netflix.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And that was one of the things that I thought was just super helpful about that co-creators process was the type of people that they connected us with and the resources that they gave us access to. I mean, I'm not going to lie, the grant was useful. it's what's allowing me to work towards incorporation as a nonprofit, as a 501c3, and moving towards creating the Oasis Project into more than just a ministry that's funded out of my back pocket or the back pockets of other staff, but will move forward into being sort of a real tangible nonprofit ministry that'll continue to bring safer spaces to conventions, conferences, and festivals.
I mean, I was going to say, for those who don't know what the Oasis Project is, do you want to tell them?
Sure.
But I mean, that's
the Oasis,
great right there. I mean, go for it.
The Oasis Project is an interfaith ministry that creates radically inclusive, safer spaces for emotional self-care and then also spiritual care at conventions, conferences, and festivals. That's not quite the vision statement as it's written, but it was how I remembered it in the moment. So, and one of the things that I think is really significant, it got its start because I was invested, in the science fiction and fantasy fan community, particularly the communities that threw fan conventions. And as I was going through seminary, I was thinking about the ways that I could serve my people, right? And so for me, that included this community of fans. And one of the things I noticed was that there was no place where someone who was feeling overwhelmed, who just needed a moment of quiet, or who needed someone who could listen and hold the kind of space for them would be able to go to and so on, without either going up to their room or leaving the convention, which for some people means that they're not going to come back. And that's bad for the individual and bad for the convention. And so I came up with this idea. And as I was beginning to figure out how to implement it and so on, other people ended up joining who have contributed greatly to sort of how the ministry has developed and how the space has filled out. And so we it's an evolving idea where there is a place and a space for this beyond just the science fiction and fantasy fan community. And last year we were at an interfaith pagan conference as the Oasis, where we provided that safer space for spiritual care, and that was a great experience, something that we're learning from. And then also last year, Reverend Siobhan Walker, who's been part of the Oasis almost since the beginning, has and I were led the Safer Spaces at WorldCon in Chicago. And so that was about building inclusive spaces, but also spaces for individual groups to be able to feel more comfortable, including an interfaith space where Sunday services were held, and also people could go and there were scriptures of many different faiths available and meditative aids and things like that. And in some ways, that's a big part of what the Oasis Room provides, is that sort of low sensory space for someone to step into, whether they just need to be quiet for a minute and stare out the window, or whether they need to sit down and read, or that kind of thing. And because we're an official part of the conventions that we're in, people don't feel like they're leaving the convention. People don't feel like they're having to go to their room or walk out the doors in order to find some quiet, but rather this is an official way for the convention to provide that kind of support for its people. And then because we are an interfaith team of clergy, we're all trained in sort of spiritual care. And we have that kind of pastoral background, both to know how to hold that kind of space, and then also to know when we're in over our heads and we need to refer out, right? And both of those are very important. Honestly, one of the things that I've found is that holding that space is sometimes the most important thing. And just people knowing that it's there makes a really big difference. Early on in the Oasis, iterations at different conventions, we had one moment where someone who is in the middle of having a panic attack came into the room, and they had a friend with them, but other friends soon arrived and surrounded them. And the Oasis staff, all we did was maintain and hold that space. But we weren't actually actively involved in tending to this person. Their friends and family, the people who were around them, their community was already there to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
But there was literally no other space in a busy convention where that could have happened. And so just holding that space has value for that. And often we will have people who come into the Oasis stressed out for reasons that have nothing to do with the convention itself. And they can take care of themselves. They can ask for help. They can find a middle ground in between, just as they need to.
Well, as I've said before, and I will say again, as a mom of a kiddo who goes to those types of conventions, and a kid who still holds out hope that one day you will end up at an anime con, kind of thing. I so appreciate that ministry because all the things that you just said, and all the text messages that I get when they are there, and like feeling like crap, and so and then it's things like they don't remember to drink fluids, you're walking around in all that space, and you've got your cosplay on and all of that, and
and everybody forgets that AC dehydrates. And so you're in this hotel, this carefully controlled environment, but it's sucking moisture out of the air and out of you. And so that's actually one of the things that we've found is actually the most helpful that the Oasis can provide is just water and, salty snacks of various kinds, because low salt, low sugar, low water, all, dehydration, all three of these things will make you feel a lot worse. And so coming into a space where you can take advantage of that, sit for a moment, kind of collect yourself, let your body re-regulate. That's often all that people need to do in order to go out and continue to have a good convention. But if they don't have that space or they're not paying attention to those things, then it can kind of tip them over. And that can lead to a pretty negative experience overall, not just for them, but for the convention and that kind of thing. And so that's one of the things that we really try and do when we're working with conventions is that we show up to the staff meetings. We talk about who we are and what we do. We make sure that there are flyers available at, information desks and things like that. And we try and talk to kind of as many people as possible about what the Oasis is, where to find us, and how to take advantage of that space, because that way people actually know that they can come find us. They know there's a place that they can go. And sometimes that is the difference between, somebody having a breakdown and then being able to, hold it together until they can get to a space where they can just take that moment to center themselves, take that time to reconnect, take that time to text message a parent and not worry about the hustle and bustle of it all.
So having gone through the whole co-creators incubator, what is there something that you learned in the process that you've made a change in the way that you're doing or you're approaching Oasis now?
So, I mean, a big part of the things that I learned were about, in a lot of ways, how to market the Oasis, right?
Okay.
And also how to think differently about how the Oasis approached spaces that weren't fan-run conventions. So that was something that was a big challenge was that we kind of had a model that we knew worked in this one type of convention setting, and developing a model that might work outside of that was something that I hadn't figured out yet. And over the course of this project, between the various mentors and instructors and so on that they equipped us with and allowed us to interact with on a monthly basis, we really learned a bunch of really different tools, both in how to think about your ministry, but also how to raise funds, how to say thank you, how to move forward with developing in kind of dynamic ways what you're doing. And one of the things that I think is coolest is that while in some ways the fundamental nature of the Oasis is unchanged, the way that I think about the Oasis is much more manifold now, right? It has layers and layers. And so that is where kind of really developing this beyond just those fan-run conventions to religious conventions to really any kind of convention, conference, or festival has really kind of developed out of. And so that's a big part of the shift. And as the board is coming together with articles of incorporation and vision statements and so on, that's something that we're thinking about in a really different way. And you mentioned Reverend Jared Huguenot of ABC New York. He was able to connect me with someone who I really was able to then have a great conversation with about how do I pitch the Oasis to a for-profit convention? Because a lot of these anime conventions, Comic-Cons, places like that, they're working on a dollars per square inch value model. And the Oasis does not generate money. That's not what we do. What we do generate is a positive fan experience. And that's really kind of learning how to think about that and articulate that in a way that would allow me to reach out to different kinds of conventions was one of those big changes that I got from the co-creators.
Yeah, I mean, having gone to one of those giant conventions twice now, going to the broadcasters convention out in Las Vegas, where you're at the convention center, which is 3 different buildings, and it's not like you're just I mean, it's a lot and so many people and so much noise and light and all of it. But both times I have gone and thought it would be so great if Paul and Siobhan were here, because I would totally go and just sit in there and be like, I don't need anything. Okay, maybe the bottle of water, and a banana or something, but just go sit in there and just be like, where it's because the American Express has an American Express lounge there but you have to have the American Express card. And yeah, they hand everybody a bag of snacks and a bottle of water when you come in. But it is I'm sure, quite a different space, having seen your short video of what your space looks like. You can't lay down. You can't it's a completely different, it's just a space is all they offer. So I think I would greatly appreciate knowing that there was somebody there that I could talk to if I wanted to, or not. But that it was just a safe space for me to go and be for 15 minutes, a half hour, whatever, and just kind of chill before going at it again. So I have a great appreciation for what you do. All the things, Paul. All the things. You're a busy guy these days.
I am. One of the things that I'll say excited about
Yes.
is that as I pivot away from ministry at Burien Community Church and everything, I'll be down to just one job, one 40-hour-a-week job, which allows me to do things like invest time in the Oasis, invest time in some of the other things that are important for me as a person, because I've been working 60 plus hours a week for almost 15 years now, and it's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I would need a nap on a regular. I mean, I need a nap now on a regular basis, but my God, yeah, that's crazy. Be like, hello, children. I'm your parent. Nice to meet you again. Kind of thing. I mean, 60 hours, that's a ton. Yeah.
It is. And
It must be nice to be able to be like, I'm rest.
Well, and one of the things that I appreciate is that the work culture here at the Evergreen Region office is one of sort of mutual encouragement and also mutual accountability. And so my tendency when I'm busy is to just get my head down and get as much work done as possible and not pay attention to time. And one of the things that I appreciate about my coworkers is that they don't let me just do that. They challenge me and they push back on me in the best possible way to make sure that I'm taking the time that I need to for myself. And so it's really a positive thing for our work relationship, but also just, kind of to be colleagues and friends, that are working with you and care about you. So
I'm glad you'll be able to breathe a little bit now. So, and even though you've been on the show before and have been asked the joy question, I don't remember what your answer was. So you can answer it however you want. You can answer it the same way if you remember how you answered it last time. But you've got all these things, great and wonderful things. But what brings you joy?
So these days, I've often been a person who's taken joy in accomplishments, in the things that I've done, that I look out there and I can say, oh, that had a positive effect on the world. Oh, that changed things. And so my growing edge has been learning to find joy in things that are just for me. And so there's, these days, spending time with my kids brings me joy, and I'm getting to do more and more of that. And after the first of the year, I'll be able to do still more and more of that. I like to say that running doesn't bring me joy, but the benefits that running brings me joy. And so there's that, and then the one of the things that I do is write, and that's mostly been for myself so far, but who knows, maybe I'll actually finish a novel at this point. And I've been working on one for a while now that I'm hoping to actually finish sometime early next year, especially as I get a little bit more time to spend on it. So and then I am very much someone who enjoys games of all kinds, but especially tabletop RPGs, Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm looking forward to being able to get some of those games off the ground again, including the all clergy game that I was part of, that I ran actually for several years. Getting that off the ground again would bring me great joy. So that's one of my goals for 2024.
All right. Awesome. Well, Reverend Paul Schneider, I'm so glad to have you back on the show, and I'm excited for all the things that you have going on, all these new opportunities and this growth, and can't wait to see what God's going to do with you next, and where this all goes. There's one more piece that I'm holding back, but I'm holding back on that just like until we've got people. Stay tuned, okay? Just stay tuned. There's another thing coming soon, very soon, and we'll put it out there. But I won't blow it just yet. So I appreciate your time. Thank you for doing the show. Thanks everybody for watching and for listening and for being a part of this adventure with me. Go and find that thing that brings you joy and do it for the glory of the Lord, and and live, but find your joy. Find your joy. You can find Ministry Mondays with Meg anywhere. Just Google me. I mean, Spotify, Apple, all the places. But you got to put the one with Meg in there, or you'll get somebody else. Anyway, we thank you for watching, for being a part of this, and stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.